Okay, welcome class. This is the review for exam number 1. As I said, the first exam, we cover an awful lot of principles and ideas, so we usually take a little bit more time. The first part of the semester is a little slower. I guarantee it will pick up in terms of work and in terms of tempo as the weeks progress. But hopefully these videos will help. This is an additional review of exam 1. Exam 1 is going to have basically 8 major essay questions. Take your time with them. You've got 3 hours. I've never given 3 hours to take an exam in as many years as I can remember. So you have plenty of time to do a good job. Don't skip a question. 3 hours, you have plenty of time. Don't answer 6 out of 8. Because when you do that, there's no answer at all, it's a 0. And a 0, it just really, really hurts the grade. Okay, everybody's doing pretty darn well. But now that we're getting into the meat of the course, you're getting your first exam. You'll be seeing this review on Wednesday. The exam will open up on Thursday, and you'll have a number of days to take the exam. In the past, typically it was during the class time. I'm giving you extra days to take the exam and take your time and answer them fully. All right, so this is an overview of what we've got for the exam. We've got a process from scarcity to marginal analysis, all right? 2, the production possibility frontier. 3, Adam Smith and his absolute advantage as compared to David Ricardo in comparative advantage, all right? 4, quantity demanded as opposed to demand. Quantity supplied as opposed to just supply. What are they? What's the difference? Then we go into equilibrium and what happens when we have that price change. And remember, a price change does not cause a shift. A price change causes a movement along the existing demand and or existing supply curve. It doesn't cause the whole curve to shift. We will go into that in just a minute. Number 6, shifts of the demand curve and the supply curve. And what do they mean? All right? So there are a number of factors that will shift the supply curve and the demand curve. And remember, if they shift them, anything shifting them to the right is more, anything shifting them to the left is less. And you can use your own good common sense in figuring, which way that's going to shift. But I think it'll come to you. All right? Number 7, elasticity, inelastic, unitary elastic, or totally elastic. Okay? We'll be seeing this again and again. And the factors that affect elasticity of demand and supply. And if there's a number of them, don't give me half of them. All right? Then finally, number 8 would be government intervention or meddling in the marketplace. Typically, price controls in terms of a price ceiling, a price floor, and quantity controls, which would be quotas. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at the first one. Well, as we talked about in your first, and you did a very good job on that scarcity question. Well, it all begins with scarcity. Every economic class you ever take is going to begin with the idea of scarcity. Everything is scarce. Every resource that we have in our life is in limited supply. And we take it one step further, facing a world of unlimited wants. Because when you are making decisions, what are you trying to do? And whether it's a big decision or a small decision, you're just trying to maximize your happiness. You're trying to pull as much happiness as you can out of that decision, all right? So we say scarcity is the fact that everything we have is in limited supply, but it faces a world of unlimited wants, all right? We're in our decisions, we're just trying to pull as much happiness as we can from them. Okay, now, again, when we have scarcity, and we do, scarcity forces us, we can't just, take it easy and, oh, this is fine, we can waste this resource, that resource, we've got unlimited supply coming in. We can't. We have to make a choice. We have to make a decision, whether it's regarding the shirts you have, the sweaters you have, or the time or the energy that you're going to expend on a certain project, whether it be school or work, whatever. We have to make a decision or a choice. When we make this choice or decision, again, remember, decision is from the Greek meaning to cut off. We cut off all the other opportunities. Those are called our opportunity cost, okay? And typically, the value of your opportunity cost, you have to put a number on it, would be the value of your second best choice, all right? Okay, now, we take these decisions, we make these decisions, and they are influenced by incentives. An incentive, again, I'd like to see you put this in. It is something that's causing us to take an action or causing us not to take an action, which in a sense is a type of action, causing us to either do something or not do something. And governments use incentives all the time for you and I in trying to guide us into making a good choice or making a choice towards something or away from something, okay? So incentives, causing us to act, a positive or a negative incentive, okay? There are direct and indirect, but we'll stick with the positive and negative incentives, okay? Now, when we get down to it, the basic decisions are either the boom, flat out, yep, either or. We either do it or we don't do it. Those are fairly easy. The more complicated ones are the ones that economists study and look at. They are called the marginal decisions. One more, additional, one more, all right? Now, that can apply to production, can apply to consumption, okay? Because remember, when it's all said and done, economics, when you boil it down, it's the study of the production and distribution and consumption of scarce resources, okay? With the overall idea of trying to make ourselves as happy as possible, okay? So when we go to the marginal decisions, or one more decision, and it doesn't matter whether it's consumption, production, amount of pollution control equipment, policy the government should institute. When we're looking at one more, we are engaging in marginal analysis because we are studying the additional cost, which is the marginal cost, and the marginal benefit, okay? So, whenever we're looking at this, we're trying to say, okay, well, where's the best place to be? Normally, when you're starting on an activity, your additional benefit typically is very high, okay? It tends to come down, which reflects the law of diminishing marginal returns, meaning basically you're getting a little less bang for your buck as you continue on doing whatever you're doing, consuming, producing, whatever. Now, the marginal cost, on the other hand, tends to go up. And if this was microeconomics, we would be taking a look at some marginal cost curves. But the long and the short of it is, we keep engaging in activity, and the rule of thumb is keep engaging in that activity as long as your marginal benefit, or call it utility or happiness, or if it was a firm revenue, is greater than the additional cost that you incur when you do one more. When they finally equal out, all right, when they finally equal out, that is your optimization point. That is the point where you should stop. That's the point where in a business you're going to be maximizing your profit, and if you're not making money, at least you'll be minimizing your loss, and you don't want to go beyond that where the marginal cost rises above the marginal benefit. Okay? Okay. Then we move down into the production possibility frontier. Production possibility frontier, we talk about, brings us to the point of efficiency. Now, efficiency has a number of different ways to be described. We can think of it as we are pulling out all the utility of whatever asset we have that are part of this activity we're taking part of. We have pulled out all the utility. There's no utility left. We are maxed out. This is as far as we can go. This is the best we can do. If you have pulled out all the utility from every one of your assets, well, you can't expect any better result. You are totally efficient, all right? Now, again, total efficiency doesn't mean it's fair. It doesn't mean everybody gets their fair share. So we can be totally efficient, yet we may not be totally equitable. It would be nice if efficiency and equity always moved hand in hand, but they don't. At some point it splits, and we know that here's where government will come in and try to say, okay, let's make this situation a little fairer for everyone. Because obviously we're all a little bit different. We've all been dealt a different hand in life, and some of us are moving along pretty well, and even when you think things are going pretty well, I hate to say, sooner or later there are a few bumps in the road. It's what you do when you hit those bumps. You work your way through it, okay? Anyway, government would say, okay, let's try to be equitable. We try to be as efficient as possible while still remembering, some folks didn't get the same benefits as others, so we try to give them a fair share, an equitable share. But when we talk about the production possibility frontier, we just say, okay, we use example of two goods. We were talking about cars and boats. And if we were making all cars, that meant every machine, every factory, every person was operating at 100% efficiency. What could we make? And we said, well, we make 100 million cars. Everybody's going flat out, okay? And if we switched over and we said, okay, now we're going to make boats, everybody retooled their plants, and all the machinery's running flat out. Everybody's working, pulling, as much as utility possible from them. And when we've done that, we cannot do any better, okay? And in so doing, let's say we can make 200 million boats, all right? Those are the extremes, all right? Now, we draw it as a straight line at first, just to get an idea of what this production possibility frontier is all about, okay? And it tells us it is the possible production frontier. It is as far as we can go in autarky, meaning we don't trade, all right? Now, with the production possibility frontier, we figure that we don't want just one good. There's probably, our society is going to want a combination of the two. And again, this is a very simple model. just so that we can get the understanding of it. So we connect the two extremes and with that straight line, and those are all different combinations of cars and boats. But the thing to remember is, doesn't matter what the combination is, what's important to remember is every single point on that line is totally efficient. So if you've got half your machines running cars, half your machines running boats, they're all going out, they're all running as fast as they can. You pulled all the utility out of everyone. Now, would this be reasonable to assume in real life? Well, no, because people are different. Machinery is different. Not every machine is as good to make one type of part as another. And people are different, okay? So what that means is, as we start making more and more of one good or another, we're going to be using, and this kind of stands to reason, you're going to be using assets that really weren't made to make that particular item. Now, are they running as fast as they can? Yes, they are. So we will say they're totally efficient. And you might even be using people that aren't really good at making that particular item, but are they working as hard as they can? Yes. So they are totally efficient. But when it's all said and done, the bottom line is you're getting less product because you're using assets that aren't suited for that particular good. So what that means is your opportunity costs go way, way up. That's what bows this out, because as we move towards one extreme and the other, we will be giving up a lot of, let's say here we're making, that's boats and that's cars. We were here, well, if we wanted to make some more cars, we would only make a few more cars, and we would have to give up so much in terms of boats, all right? We're giving up a lot, so our opportunity costs go way up, okay? And another idea of this efficiency could be efficiency in not just production or consumption, in distribution. If there were 25 of you in class and I had 250 jelly beans and I gave each one of you 10, I'm completely maxed out. I was completely efficient in my distribution, okay? I can't do any better than that. Now, just as we move from one extreme to the other, if someone in the class said, well, I want to be happier, I want more jelly beans, the only way I can make anyone happier is if I make someone less happy, okay? And the same thing here, the only way you can make more of one good when you start, especially when you start reaching the end, you're going to have to make a lot less of the other good, okay? Now, one other thing to remember. This production possibility frontier is not static, which is great news for you folks because you got your whole life ahead of you. It can bow outward because of increases. Typically, we think of technology, but if we had a huge influx of labor or discovery of the new world, all right, those things, new resources, new technology, are going to bow this whole production possibility frontier outward. And it does, all right? And it's going to continue for the rest of your life. Now, one last thing about it, does it always, bow out consistently? It only would do that if the new technology or the new resources that we introduced that shifted outward increased productivity evenly for all goods in society. And the likelihood of that are probably slim and none. So in reality, remember that this is going to bow out, but it's going to favor some goods over others. So it might end up looking something like here and then something like that. So these types of goods really got the big bang for their buck. These are better, you're better off here, but not by as much, okay? All right, now we'll move on to Adam Smith, absolute advantage, David Ricardo, comparative advantage. Trade does create value. Trade, international trade, enables a country to end up going out here, outside of their production possibility frontier. And you say, well, how's that possible? Because, you know, when we're looking at a production possibility frontier, that's as far as you can go. That's true. That's as far as you can go by yourself. But now we're introducing the rest of the world. Adam Smith said, okay, absolute advantage. Countries can just flat out, they're more efficient. This country can make more of these two particular goods than this country. So he would tell the other countries that can't make as many goods because they are not as efficient for one reason or another. He would say, this country has got an absolute advantage. They can absolutely flat out beat you. They can make more. So you tell the second country, go out and find something that you have an absolute advantage in, that you are more efficient in. Then come back to the table and then trade, and both countries will be better off. And that is true, all right? So if we were talking about pizzas and wings and we said, hey, you know, Debbie can make more pizzas and wings than the other fella, well, he doesn't, you know, Adam Smith would say, go out and find other items like cheeseburgers and coney dogs. And if you can make those better, then come back and you'll take your items that you have an absolute advantage in, and you'll look at the other country where they have their absolute advantage, then you can trade, okay? Now, David Ricardo took it one step further, okay? He said, all right, you know, I can see where, you know, countries that have absolute advantage in this good and another has an absolute advantage in that good, if they trade, yeah, the societies would be better off. But let's look at it a little more deeply. Even if a country can't make as much, you know, in terms of final dollar goods and services of a particular item, let's take a look at, you know, what their internal costs are. In other words, what are their opportunity costs? What does it cost them to make a particular item? And he says, even though I know they can't make as much, but even though they can't make as much, how much does it cost them to make, you know, the level of production that they're at? Now, if a country, even though they can't make as much, you know, they don't have an absolute advantage, but if it doesn't cost them as much to make that particular amount of goods and services, well, then David Ricardo says they have a comparative advantage. Comparative advantage is born out of opportunity cost. And so what he would say is, you don't have to go out and look for other products where you have an absolute advantage. He would say, take a look at where your opportunity costs are lowest, and the other country where your opportunity costs are lowest. Then concentrate on those areas, all right? Then making the product, concentrating on the product where your opportunity costs are lowest, then you can trade. You don't have to go out and find brand new products. If you have different opportunity costs, you specialize or you concentrate on the goods and services where you have a lower opportunity cost, then you can trade, and that will put your country outside its production possibility frontier. Matter of fact, what he did say was the only time that international trade would not benefit the countries of the world would be if every single country had the exact same opportunity cost on every single good that there was. And, what are the chances of that happening, okay? So, he said, other than that, there is always, David Ricardo would say, there's always room for trade. There's always a benefit to trade. Okay? All right. So that's 3. Now, quantity demanded or demand, quantity supplied or supplied. Remember, again, quantity demanded is 1 point. It's just 1 point. At a quantity demanded is 1 point you and I want. It's a specific amount at a specific price. It's just 1 point. But as more and more prices are thrown at us, and we give out, okay, at this other price, we'll want this quantity. Going on the general principle that as the price goes up, typically the quantity demanded will go down, okay? And if the price goes down, the quantity demanded will go up, which gives us this negative slope of the demand curve. Now, if they kept throwing prices out at us, and they just filled us with every single price that there was, then we would, be connecting all the dots. Then we would have what is known as the demand curve. That's all the quantities demanded at every single price level, okay? And it slopes down because there's an inverse relation between price and quantity demanded. Now, on the other side of the coin, suppliers, it's a somewhat quantity demanded and quantity supplied and supplied is somewhat similar. It is a quantity, if you and I are producers, that we want to make at a specific price. So it's 1 point again. But now as more and more prices are thrown at us, we will respond with different quantities supplied, okay? Now, if you keep throwing enough prices at us, the dots are going to get closer and closer together. Now, for the supply curve, not surprisingly, as the price goes up, we'll tend to want to supply more. If the price goes down, we will tend to want to supply less. So they have a positive relationship, and there's a positive slope to the supply curve, okay? Now, important thing is what we talked about, price change. Price change does not cause either this supply or demand curve to shift. It will result in a movement along the demand curve from 1 point to another, or a movement along the supply curve from 1 point to another. Now, in a free market without government intervention, which we'll be talking about in the final clip, once supply and demand meet, we have the quantity demanded is equal to the quantity supplied. We call that equilibrium. That is the equilibrium price, and it gives us an equilibrium quantity, okay? Now, if the price, for some reason, starts going up, floating up above equilibrium, we just bring it across. Not too many people want it, but the suppliers want to make a lot of it. So what we have is a surplus. Now, the market, as we said, typically the market is efficient and the market moves to equilibrium, okay? Market can fail, there are market failures, but generally speaking, the market is efficient and it will move to equilibrium. And that's what happens here. If the price is up here above equilibrium, we're going to have a huge surplus. And that will cause market pressure to build, moving us back down to equilibrium. And the reverse is also true. If the price floated down below equilibrium, now we're down here. Now we as demanders are happy. We want a lot, but the suppliers aren't going to be making a lot. So we have not a surplus, we have a shortage. Again, market pressure will build, and will bring us back to equilibrium. Okay? All right. Now, I'm going to probably pull the other boards up. I've got one board because we're going to detail some of these in a little bit more clear way for you. Let me see. I'm trying to keep these videos on the shorter side because sometimes they take a long time to post. All right. So we've got these are the first 5 questions, and now we'll go into 6, 7, and 8. Also, remember that not all the questions have the same point value. All right. Some maybe number 3, absolute advantage, comparative advantage, might have might be worth a little less, but you'll see what the point values are. So make sure you spend a little bit more time on the questions that have the higher point value. Okay? All right. All right. That will conclude our first video, and then let me stop it now, and then we will start the next one.